What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I just wanted to give you a quick update on the D&D press event that was yesterday. I literally went to the press event and then ended up at the D&D party and then passed out and literally woke up in the clothes from yesterday, and I was like, you know what, I got to make this video. So, yeah, if you don't use Twitter, you probably didn't know, but I live tweeted the entirety of the event. Um, and I tried to capture as much as possible, but it was pretty fast and furious, especially in the Q&A section, so I tried to grab as much as I could. Um, but yeah, I attended a WotC press event. It's the first time I think we've ever done one of these. The closest thing would have, I guess, been the summit, but this was a 4-hour press event. They had a whole big venue. There's pictures and stuff of the venue on over on my Twitter, but yeah, they basically gave us a presentation about D&D, the future, some new stuff that's coming. And at the end, we got a swag bag, which I have right here. We'll go through what's inside the swag bag at the end. And yeah, I thought we could just talk about it. So without further ado, we'll take a little break from Player's Handbook content and we'll just go ahead and go through my Twitter. So Greg Tito kicked us off. And then we rolled into Jess Lanzillo was talking. She's the head of D&D franchise and product. And basically, she gave us just kind of a rundown. Like, we started, it was basically, let's talk about D&D's history, let's talk about D&D now, and then let's talk about D&D in the future. Um, the most of it, we can kind of, they talked about, their most recent internal estimates from, like, internal data is 64 million D&D fans. Now that's fans, right? Not necessarily players. So like BG3 players are included in the 64 million number. They talked a little bit about how the boom of D&D during the pandemic, specifically that D&D Beyond saw a rise of 300% in its users during the pandemic. We now know that the virtual tabletop, they're calling it a 3D sandbox, and it's called Project Sigil. Um, they referenced BG3 and Honor Among Thieves, the movie. They also publicly acknowledged that they screwed up with the OGL, which I was actually shocked to see like in a presentation talking about the history of D&D. I assumed they were just going to glance over the OGL, but they owned up to the fact that like that was a problem and that they're extremely happy of the where they've landed with all of the content ending up in Creative Commons because now it's untouchable and it's like irrevocable for, perpetuity. And then they also referenced again that the SRD 5.2 is coming, which is again the updated version of the SRD that'll kind of encompass the new 2024 rules. I'll keep on moving through. Basically, long story short is D&D is now more widespread than it's ever been, so they're constantly working to honor the legacy of Dungeons and Dragons while also looking at how they can adapt it for the new landscape we're in and bring in new players. It also is very apparent to me that they want D&D Beyond to become some sort of nexus or marketplace for things, all things D&D. Don't know what this spells for the future of the DMs Guild, but it does sound like they're going to continue to work with third-party partners to get additional content added to D&D Beyond. Right now, it is very much a white glove service where like they'll take it and import it and do all of the ingestion, and it's again just super high level, like high end, high quality products that are well renowned within the fan community, like Cobalt Press, Hit Point Press, all that kind of stuff. So that is the for now, but I think they had said at some point they'd ideally like in 2 years. Self actualization is the term they use, but basically self publishing, similar to I imagine what the DMs Guild has. Who knows what parameters will go into that, and create retaining rights and all that kind of stuff. We don't know, but that was just something that they brought up. But Jess is a she's an artist, and she said, I'd love for D&D Beyond to become this nexus where like artists could release music, so like potentially could like just I don't know if it's just like I really have a hard time fully understanding what this means, but she mentioned possibly having people be able to commission art for your characters, selling dice, etc. So I'm not sure if this is like expanding the forums of D&D Beyond to be like that, or what I think the intention of this was is like it becomes a much larger marketplace for other things. Like I've got my D&D Beyond character sheet. And like maybe there's a little button that's like, hey, when you go to like, choose your portrait for your character, maybe there's an option where you can like click commission and it'll pull up a list of artists that work with D&D Beyond, and you can maybe pay for an artist to commission you art of your character, and like they've got your character sheet automatically or whatever else. I don't know if this means we're gonna get like people will be able to upload their musical tracks to D&D Beyond so that you'll be able to like use sound effects or soundboards or what have you. She mentioned selling dice. I can't imagine this is like physical dice, but maybe people are able to render cool looking digital dice and then you could buy them just like you can buy dice on D&D Beyond now. This has a lot of potential and I'm very excited for where it could go, but it all is purely just, talk into the ether here. We don't really know what that means. All right, so next up, it was Chris Perkins, rather, and Jeremy Crawford to talk about the new stuff, the new books. One thing I did think was interesting is that all three books come in at 384 pages. It's a little interesting tidbit there. I'm kind of going to glance over all the PHB stuff as the coverage is coming out now. They also said there's a new character sheet product coming. They've done this in the past where they release basically like a soft cover packet of a bunch of character sheets that are like higher quality, like stock paper. I don't know if they'll have unique character sheets in there, like different from what's in the player's handbooks. Like this is the paladin sheet, this is the wizard sheet, or what have you. But we'll see when they come out. Well, let's see. We talked about the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they talked about basically the main breakdowns are Bastion rules, the Greyhook campaign setting, the poster map, sample adventures, a lore glossary, and then a bunch of tracking sheets. And one of the appendices itself is just maps that you can reuse, just generic maps to use in your games. We already heard about Bastion rules. We've heard a little bit about this Greyhawk campaign setting, but basically that it is they're calling it a full campaign setting. I'm not sure exactly what that entails, but they're basically saying rather than just tell you go run a campaign, we're going to kind of show you how to build one using Greyhawk as an example. And it has specifics, but it's not so broken down that you can't like tweak and alter it yourself to make it yours. The poster map is double-sided. One side is the world of Greyhawk. The other side is the city of Greyhawk. And then they also mentioned that they have a section in there about talking about a campaign hub with the city of Greyhawk being drawn up as an example of if you want to have your players have like a central repository place where they go back to this campaign hub. City of Greyhawk is a great example to kind of show out what that is. Again, they said there's 5 sample adventures, and this is again to show you more how to build adventures, like one-shot styles or how to write stuff out. Stuff that probably most DMs do. Like some DMs will design a whole overarching campaign, but most are probably writing up like, here's an adventure that we're going to run through today, and they kind of are giving you examples on how to do that. We've heard about it before, but there's also the lore glossary to mimic the rules glossary that's in the player's handbook, and the lore glossary is for folks who are just new to D&D or just don't have the depth of knowledge. Like if someone's referencing Mordenkainen or Vecna and, who are the legendary wizards whose spells exist, that kind of stuff. So for folks who don't have that knowledge, there's a lore glossary or to help give you that information. And then again, they showed off a couple. There are some tracking sheets for like tracking NPCs or magic items or things like that. We also know the breakdown of the chapters. They are the basics, running the game, the DM's toolbox, adventures, campaigns, cosmology, treasure, bastions, and then we have Appendix A is the lore glossary, Appendix B is the maps, and then there's the tracking sheets and the poster map. All magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide have been reviewed and updated to be, quote, more fun. There's also some more nostalgic magic items. I'm pretty sure this is leaning into the fact that we've already heard that the cartoon characters, D&D cartoon characters, magic items will all be contained in the DMG, but it could be something else as well. The tracking sheets looked pretty great. They did have a baby flump on them. The reason I'm not showing you pictures here is we were told no video, no audio of the event. You could take pictures, but they didn't want like pictures of the actual pages, more pictures of like the people talking. So otherwise I would have done that because they did show us some cool stat blocks, but we'll get to that in a second. The poster map is 21 by 30. Every element of the Dungeon Master's Guide has been revised and reorganized. And it says, like, the art in the PHB is all about building characters, so the art reflects characters. The Dungeon Master Guide is all about building locations and worlds, so a lot of the art is like scenescapes to kind of further evoke that imagery. The DM screen, I really, really like what they said they're doing with the DM screen. So they actually worked with like a UX designer on what to put where on the DM screen. So you've still got your 4 panels. And what they did is they actually designed it in such a way that if you have a laptop blocking the middle of the DM screen, the more important, more relevant information is on the outside wings. Whereas, like, stuff that may be less useful is the stuff that would be hidden by your laptop. So a lot of actually impressive design work went into building the new Dungeon Master screen. We didn't get to see too much. We saw like 2 of the panels. I'm happy to say that conditions are contained all down into one panel, unlike some of the absolutely atrocious ones like we saw with, I think, the Tyranny of Dragons Dungeon Master screen had conditions take up the full 2 middle panels. What a waste of time. All right, so we move to the monster manual. Stuff we've probably already heard before, right? 500 plus monsters, more apex creatures, more NPCs, expanded monster families, stat block improvements, and then monster treasure suggestions. This is very cool. We'll talk about that in a minute. They reference more of the apex creatures. We've already heard about the Blob of Annihilation, the CR20 Ooze. They once again mentions the Arch Hag, and then a giant construct, I think, is something we hadn't heard of before. More NPCs and new NPC groups as well. So, like, if you had, like, Guard and Guard Captain, you might have other instances in the Guard, but, like, also now we'll have a whole subgroup of NPCs that are pirates. And again, they talked about this in the past, but they're all going to be alphabetical, right? So, like, Gelatinous Cube will be under G for Gelatinous Cube, not O for Ooze. It sounds like Pirate will be under P for Pirate, as opposed to, like, NPCs in the back. They once again have referenced the additional vampire options, both high and low CR vampire options. They said every single stat block was reviewed and updated, and officially calling out that the cat has dark vision in the 2024 Player's Handbook. They also said now the random treasure tables, they said in the 2014 Dungeon Master Guide, it was kind of based on power level, right? Random treasure table A was weaker things than random treasure table I. But now they're saying they're more thematic, right? So one is religious artifacts, one is religious relics, one is arcane artifacts, one is like weapons and armor. So they're kind of themed towards that. And that whole monster treasure tables is essentially like if you fight a monster, it will tell you if you're looking to add magical items to or like treasure for this creature, use this table. Like if you're fighting like a lich, it might say, okay, upon defeating the Lich, roll on the arcane artifacts table, or however it's going to say. So that's how they're kind of tying that together to better give you that thought process, which is great because a lot of like older editions used to do this. It would tell you like consider giving this gear if for this is what they have on them. So now we're getting a new 5th edition version of that, which I'm very excited about. We saw several pages of the monster manual. We saw the green dragon, we saw skeletons, and we saw Kuatoa, which is pretty cool. And the art looks fantastic. They also said the art is more art in action. So whereas previous books we had more like portraits, like it's just like here's a picture of an Azer, here's a picture of a rock. This is more like the monsters in an action scene. Like so for like the skeletons, it showed like an adventurer fighting off a bunch of army of like skeletons and stuff. It showed like the green dragon using its magic to manipulate people, like things like that. Very cool stuff. So that was kind of that. Oh, one thing, cannot take full credit for this, but I will tell you, I did speak with the art director, and I didn't even realize that I had met him at the summit last year in April. And he was basically relatively new to the company, and we sat down for lunch on that first day. And he said, "Hey, I'm, getting started on the art side of stuff for these new books. If there's anything you could see, you'd want to see in these new books, what would it be?" And I said, art for every subclass in the Player's Handbook. And I can't say with certainty that I had anything to do with that directly, but I will say that I said that to him. He actually brought that up to me at the event, after the event, like came up and said, "Hey, I just wanted to say, it's funny you said that." And then there is art for every subclass in the player's handbook. I'm not claiming credit for that, but those are pieces of the puzzle, so consider that. All right, then we had Chris Ko and Kale Stutzman talking about Project Sigil, which again is the 3D sandbox virtual tabletop. They were also showing that they do have BG3 assets, so they had like a Karlak mini and a Asterion mini mixed in there. So they said some of the devs have already been working on other stuff within Project Sigil, like using it to build chess, checkers, or even dragon chutes and ladders. They did show a video of the builder on screen, kind of how they're building things. And I'm doing my best to work on my end to see if I can't get you guys more access or exclusive like content regarding the virtual tabletop. So I'm pushing that. We'll see what happens. I can't guarantee anything will happen from that, but I'm trying. They said their goal is to make it not like overtly difficult, like a programming language. They said if we could make this basically the equivalent of digital graph paper when they're talking about like building out like drawing rooms and maps for a D&D game, that's what their goal is to do. They want this to be a tool. They do not, made this very abundantly clear, they do not want to be a video game. They do not want this to be a video game. Characters won't have animation and movements. They're toys, basically. They use the concept of like toy simulator a lot, right? Like you are moving around little toys on a map, little minis. It's not like, they're not going to be idling animations of these characters. It's not going to be Baldur's Gate 3. They don't want to be Baldur's Gate 3. They even flat out said that they recognize that Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the best expressions of D&D in a video game, but they don't want to do that. They just want to build an immersive digital space for you to play D&D if you want. They're also very much like, if you love tabletop D&D and love sitting around at a table, do that. We're not forcing you. We're not even encouraging people to use this. We're just providing an additional tool. And I really like the mentality and the way they talked about this because they were very adamant about this is a tool to help you. Use it or don't. They're like, maybe when you maybe like they said when they play with it, sometimes people are fully remote using and playing around in the virtual tabletop, but they said sometimes when they're sitting down in person, they just have like a screen or a TV up and have that to kind of showcase instead of having like a map in front of you with minis, they have it digitally on a screen, and then that way if somebody can't make it, they can still log in and have essentially the same experience without physically being in the room. It is in Unreal 5. They've said that before. They again said they're not making a video game, but using it to make the best toy simulator, not the best video game. It's designed to make things very smooth, and part of that is also so that it'll be able to go to consoles, and we'll get to that in a minute. Very big stress on you stay in control. The goal is to make things easier. There will be plug and play adventures, and you can also create things yourself. It also sounds like they're dealing with potentially a marketplace option as well, where people can just like share maps or adventures and things. Once again, stress that is not a replacement for tabletop play. So they did said the improvement and the integration with D&D Beyond is improving every day. Also, you will not be buying books in this. So they like it links with D&D Beyond. They also flat out said like if you want to view text, D&D Beyond will be a better option for you to view the text. It's a better reader than the virtual tabletop. Now you can get access to things like character sheets and adventures, and they have basically like a drill down adventure tab that is a very like wiki based where you can just go in and add and delete things if you want, but to truly just for reading purposes they're suggesting that they would probably use D&D Beyond, but it does have integration with it. So it sounds like if I buy my books on D&D Beyond, and I'll see if I can't confirm this officially, but if I buy my books on D&D Beyond, then I have those in the virtual tabletop. The only thing that I guess it wouldn't matter is like if they release a virtual tabletop only adventure, or if I develop a virtual tabletop only adventure and like share it or possibly sell it on a marketplace, then you would have to buy that, but you wouldn't be buying like the player's handbook again inside this. Um, It does seem that again there will be spell effects. So if you do cast fireball, like it'll go and blow up a fireball on the map. It says character sheets are available, but designed to be in a way that are minimal. So, like, again, if you have the character sheet, like, they don't want it to take up your whole screen, but they also recognize that in between turns, people are going to want to view their character sheet. So they kind of have like a condensed down version of the character sheet that appears in like the wherever you want it UI wise, but like a little small version of it that's like your, the base, like the quick hit version, cheat sheet, if you will. But then you could choose to open it up, and it was interesting because they're really focusing on feedback from the players on this. So they even brought up at one point, like, we've play tested it with so many new players, we didn't even have inventory in the game. Like, in the virtual table app, there was no section for inventory on, like, your character. But when we introduced it to all new all new players, nobody cared. It never came up. But then when we started demoing it with more veteran players, the veteran players were like, where's my inventory? So they added inventory into the virtual tabletop. But like that's the level of interactivity they're having with feedback from players and like people in the game. So there is a beta. We'll get to that eventually. There is a beta that you can sign up for. It's not live yet, but there's an option to sign up for it on D&D Beyond. And they are stressing heavily that this beta will inform so much of what the future of Project Sigil is. So it's super important that if you have interest in this, that you go and sign up for that and make your feelings about it known. They said there's also like real-time interactivity. Like if I'm measuring something on the map, you can see that I'm measuring something on the map. I can like pick up and move my mini around and like shake it and twist it. They also said they're working with like productivity like experts to like bring in things like there's an option in there to like raise hand to like before you speak, so like so no one's talking over each other, things like that. Just little creativity and productivity improvements. Um, they said it's really easy to customize things. So like if like the initiative carousel comes up and everybody rolls initiative, but you don't want to roll in the game, you want to roll physical dice, you can just roll physical dice and then just tap on it and then change your number. Like the DM can do that. That's easy enough. So if you want to do like a hybrid play, that's an option for you too. We heard again about this adventure panel. That's the wiki format thing I was telling you about. That's very easy to edit. They mentioned again drag and dropping in like new adventures or maps, so it does seem there will be some degree of shareability. It is going to go to consoles, mobile, and PC. The thing that they said is it's largely dependent on this beta because they don't know what they don't need. They don't know what players want. Like they're looking to add toggles and things to like turn off features or turn on features that people want or don't want. And they want to get through this PC beta and kind of figure out what's going on before they drive in earnest on the console side of things, because their feelings are if we were to like put it out and work on console stuff and then so much of it has to change, it's a lot easier for them to just go in with the more final product developed with all of the bells and whistles figured out and then develop that on console rather than like have to do them simultaneously. So that's the plan. That's kind of the benefit of it being in Unreal 5 is it's app-based and it can be on your phone. It can be on consoles. They also said they're looking into, I wrote VT because my phone auto-corrected. It's VR. So like the problem they said with VR is the fatigue of like wearing the VR like headset for so long, but they're working on it. So they're like, if there's the potential that you could have Project Sigil on VR as well. Then we kind of rolled into the Q&A. And then somebody asked, how will D&D Beyond differentiate between 2014 and 2024? And it's basically, if it's shared content, like it's going to appear in multiple things, like a monster stat block or what have you. The goal basically is to replace things on D&D Beyond with the 2024 versions. And like, if it's something that was updated in 2024, it seems like that will be the new standard. So they used Fireball as an example. So it sounds like, to the very least, spells will be like, if a spell is updated in the 2024 Player's Handbook, that will be the version you have on D&D Beyond. Other things, though, they had mentioned will be like flagged as 2014 or flagged as 2024. It's hard to really determine from that statement to really get more out of it, so we'll have to wait and see once the final product is available there. Someone asked Chris Perkins, will magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide have prices? The answer was yes. A unresounding yes. Also, there will be new magic item crafting rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide that marry similar to the crafting rules that are in the player's handbook. So more ways to gain magic items as well. Someone asked, is the future of D&D all digital? Flat out answer was no, it is not. What consoles will it be on? Again, it was determined that once they're still at too early of a stage to determine what consoles it will be on. There is a new WotC president started, but apparently I guess he just started like this week, and most of the folks were at Gen Con or leaving to get ready for Gen Con, so we'll have to wait and see what the deal is with the new president. Seems like people don't really know at the moment. What was the most challenging spell to redesign and why? Jeremy Crawford said it was Wish, but he really likes what the changes that were made to it. When can we learn more about bastions? Chris Perkins was a huge fan of one-word answers for this. He just said soon. But they also said you can check the Unearthed Arcana as well as the video they did to get more information. We heard again that looking to have D&D Beyond have options to self-actualize and make your own content in the future. So hopefully the ideal one would be allowing people to make full-blown custom classes on D&D Beyond, but I don't know how reasonable that is to do. I personally asked a question about spiritual weapon. I did it mostly as a joke. My question was literally spiritual weapon ... concentration. Why? And it apparently, like, it's making its rounds on the internet, which I think is really funny. So yeah, I asked that question as a joke. And basically what Jeremy Crawford says, it was switched to concentration because it was too good. Essentially, it was bogging down turns in combat because your player... So realistically, let's talk about the elephant in the room. For the cleric, it's spirit guardians, spiritual weapon, and then an attack or whatever their action is. So every turn the cleric would have they'd move somewhere. He didn't say it like this, but we all know that's what it is, right? I move, I'm going to do whatever I'm doing for my action. I'm going to put somebody in now with Spirit Guardians aura. They're going to have to all take damage from the Spirit Guardians. We're going to have to resolve all that. Then I'm going to use my bonus action to move my spiritual weapon and attack. I'll be honest, that sounds like a bullshit answer to me. The answer is it was too good, and I get that. But bogging down the turns, you gave the monk 5 attacks. You want to talk about a bogged down turn? That's bogged down, is 5 unarmed strikes in a turn with flurry of blows. That spiritual weapon being there with other concentration spells doesn't really bog down the turn. You just didn't want to have that as part of the power balance, and that's fine. It is what it is. I get it. I think that's smaller on the degree of things to update. I think like the changes to Smite, while I don't agree with the way they're done, the changes to Smite and the changes to Wild Shape, those make sense to me. I think Spiritual Weapon was probably fine, but I get the reason why, so yeah, I'm going to move on from that. Again, we heard again that this concept of the third-party content on D&D Beyond is currently curated. It'll be possibly self-publishing in the future. Any plans for custom minis in Project Sigil, as in people updating and uploading their own custom minis? Potentially, but the problem is, especially if you're allowing people to share it and you don't necessarily know how to design these things properly, it can lead to, like, you could basically blow up somebody's computer by having so much crazy stuff rendered into one mini. So they haven't shown it off, but they actually do have a character builder where, like, you have a whole bunch of minis. They're obviously going to have the BG3 assets in there as well. But basically, you're going to have a character, and then you can basically toggle. I don't know if it's to the degree of, like, Hero Forge or not, but essentially you are going to have customization where you can tweak and customize your mini and swap things out. So we'll see how good that is. I'm hoping to get some more content on that in the future, but for right now, that's all we know. The builder mode of Project Sigil will have the exact same specs as the player mode. It's not like 2 different versions of the build. So, whatever if you can play it, you can also build in it. How customizable is it? Like I said, they basically said they are working to add toggles to turn on and off different features. One of the ones they added recently was like turning on and off the grid, but they're waiting for the beta to really figure out what people want. Like, is Fog of War super important to people? Whatever it is, to figure out what they need to have turnable on and off. And then once they have like that list, they'll implement that in the game and then, go from there. What is the pricing model for Project Citadel? So we were told, oh my god, I had so many typos typing so fast here. It's play for free with constraints. They said if you're a D&D Beyond sub, you'll get more stuff, but they're really leaning into this beta to figure out what players want. Meaning, like, would you want to buy terrain packs where you're buying assets or like paints, to like paint over an area? It's really dependent on what players want. How big is a bastion? Chris Perkins said it's basically scalable. Like, could be as small as like a ship, could be as big as a city. It guess that spawned a follow-up question because someone said, "Why do you hate clerics now?" to Jeremy Crawford, which I didn't mean to paint a target on him, but I also asked about what about left behind subclasses, as in things like the Tempest Domain and Necromancy Wizard. And Jeremy did flat out say there are plans to bring some of the older subclasses forward in future products with an updated coat of paint. And he mentioned, like, if you want to play a Forge Domain Cleric, a very popular cleric, you can still do that with the new Cleric base stat rules. And that I completely agree with. But the problem that I'm specifically addressing here in my mind is the subclasses that never, like, that were so, like, Forge Domain is solid across the board. It's a great cleric. But it also has the benefit of its release date being so more recent that it had better updated things. If we look back at things like the Knowledge Domain Cleric, the Nature Cleric, the Necromancy Wizard, some of these things are really poorly done, so they really could use an update. So that I'm glad to see that some of them may appear. Yes, we can still go ahead and play some of the newer subclasses with the updated base classes, but either way. Somebody asked about the Artificer as well, and Jeremy Crawford said it is coming. You can obviously, they're saying you can play the Artificer with the 2024 rules, meaning like new spells and feats and stuff. But he said there are some new Artificer goodies in the works, but he can't talk about them right now. Which was a shock to a handful of people at the panel. They were like, "Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing." So potentially more cool Artificer stuff coming in the future. No more information than that at the moment. So there you go, folks. That is a quick breakdown. A quick is 32 minutes of the press event that happened with WotC yesterday. Now, I did tell you I was going to go over the swag bag. So they did have food there. It was just kind of random food, but they did have 3 drinks, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, one was a copy of the player's handbook. So now I'm sitting on 2 copies. So one of these I'll be giving away, and if I can gather more, I'll try that as well. They gave us this book here called Puncheons and Flagons. It is their new like cocktail book. And they actually gave us 3 mocktails that were the options of the drinks we could have at the event. 3 mocktails from this book. I tried one. I didn't particularly like it, but either way. It comes with a 50th anniversary kind of little notebook and pen. The gold leaf on the front there. It comes with a GenCon dice tray. This is the kind that like you snap the corners together. A GenCon badge holder. And this D&D coffee mug. I don't have them next to me. They did also come with a pair of 50th anniversary sunglasses. We're actually pretty nice, like dark blue shade sunglasses. They're around here somewhere. I don't know where to put them. But yeah, so that was what we got from the press event. So, oh, and then this 50th anniversary bag, which does actually have a zipper on the top, which is pretty cool. So that was the contents of the press event, as well as the contents of the associated swag bag. Unfortunately, I had a handful of events this Gen Con, so I won't be able to attend all of the panels. I really wanted to attend the third party content like D&D Beyond panel, And I actually heard from some of the people at the WotC party in the evening, some of the WotC folks were saying, we were really actually kind of hoping, I think I'm in a panel actually at that time, but they were hoping that I would be in that panel to live tweet out on it. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do that. But I am looking to attend the virtual tabletop meeting on Sunday, that their panel rather on Sunday. So I'm very interested in this new 3D virtual tabletop because of the fact that I'm not really invested in a virtual tabletop. I don't particularly like virtual tabletop, so I don't have like a loyalty or a monetary or time investment into a virtual tabletop at this point. That's why when you see when I do the Fandelver and Below streams, I occasionally do like the D&D Beyond maps, and I do that just because it's easy and it happens to have the maps for the thing I'm looking for in it. But I'd be curious to give this a shot because I want to see, like, from somebody who's not necessarily anti-virtual tabletop, but not like a huge fan, if this is easy enough to use as they're touting it to be, this could be something that I could get really into, and then maybe we could do streams and build stuff around, like, building maps and how to use that in the future. But I'm also looking, hopefully, to be the person to kind of give you more, like, exclusive news on the virtual tabletop, just because I don't think anybody's really talking about it. And honestly, a lot of people thought it disappeared because they basically went dark on talking about the virtual tabletop for like 8 months. We saw it at PAX Unplugged last year, and then there's been no communication about it until they mentioned the free Gold Dragon Mini if you pre-order stuff. So anyway, that's the press event. If you have any more questions, sound off in the comments. If there's anything that's desperately like needs addressing, I'll make a follow-up video. Otherwise, I'll just try to answer your comments as best as possible. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.